You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today a conversation with Zahirah Eppard from Sound Vision Foundation about how not to be wasteful during Ramadan. But first, some news headlines. Ontario mosque attacker full of hate, says Imam. Canada issues Eid stamp for fourth consecutive year. Drive-by shooting leaves 5 Muslim men injured after evening prayers. Canadian Imam says Israel's attack on Aqsa a challenge to human rights law and law. And now the details. Ibrahim Hindi, the Imam of Dar al-Tawhid Islamic Centre in Ontario, says the alleged attacker who sprayed mosque attendees with bear repellent during Fajr or early morning prayers thought he was there to kill terrorists. In a news conference Friday, Hindi demands immediate action from the provincial and federal government to strengthen security measures and combat growing Islamophobic sentiments in the country. Despite his Muslim-sounding name, Peel Police confirmed that Mohammed Moiz Omar was not part of any mosque. Omar also self-identified as ex-Muslim over social media and shared numerous anti-Muslim posts. Canada Post has released its 4th Eid stamp since 2017. It is among several annual stamp issues marking events of importance to Canadians. Eid festivals this year begin in early May and early July. They are celebrated by more than 1 million Muslims in Canada and millions more worldwide. Other religious festivals recognized with stamps include Diwali, Hanukkah, and Christmas. Soapbox Design of Toronto designed the Eid stamp. Designer Richard Nally-Petter created the lantern stamp using a montage of photographs and illustrations to create texture and background color. Police investigate a drive-by shooting that left 5 Muslim men seriously injured after Taraweeh or nightly prayers in Scarborough, Ontario early Saturday morning. The group was in a plaza near the Scarborough Muslim Cultural Centre when shots were fired from a passing car. Yusuf Ingar, the secretary of the Scarborough Muslim Association, says he does not believe hate motivated the incident. The association is working with the local police department in its investigations. As of Sunday morning, 3 of the 5 victims were discharged from hospital. A Canadian imam who was present during Friday's raid of Masjid al-Aqsa by Israeli police that left 150 injured says that Israel violated international law and human rights in the attack. Imam Azam Abu Rayash, a graduate of Al-Azhar with a PhD from the University of Toronto, speaking Saturday at a Justice for All webinar, pointed out that Israel is also a signatory of declarations that protect freedom of religion, belief, and safe worship. The Jewish holiday of Passover began on Friday and will last until Saturday evening. Abu Rayash says far-right Jewish groups call for raids of Al-Aqsa during this time. And that's it for the news. In the Qur'an, God tells us that he dislikes those who waste. Yet we live in a throwaway society. So to help us understand how we can follow this Quranic verse better during Ramadan, we are joined by our regular guest, Zahirah Eppard from Sound Vision. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam. Nice to join you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Now, you're a regular guest with us and you have a newsletter that you're in charge of putting out every week. This week has emphasized how not to be wasteful in Ramadan. Tell us why you wanted to highlight that topic.
So we have put out a newsletter in Ramadan each week to reflect on different things that we can do better. And there is not much we can do better than pay attention to not only fasting, but how we go about fasting. And that has to do with trying to reduce waste of all kinds during Ramadan.
What are the top 3 kinds of waste that you wanted us to focus on?
I think it's really interesting to try to organize information in this area into 3 particular places. One, how we reduce food waste, how we reduce water waste, and also how we reduce energy use.
Okay, so those are very neat topics. Let's just take them one by one if we can. Let's start with food waste. I mean, we know that women spend hours in the kitchen and there are more dishes, and dishes only cooked during Ramadan, and it's like a feast every day. So tell us, why are Muslims doing this if we're not supposed to be wasteful?
So, the why I think is about, excuse me, I'm fasting. The why is about, I think, not being mindful of our actions. And so, a group called Ecomina, which is a nonprofit that does environmental research in the Middle East, has determined that there's about 1/5 of all of the food either purchased or prepared during Ramadan that actually goes to waste. That's ungodly, really.
Mm.
And making the matter even worse is that sometimes waste in the Muslim community is exponentially increased during Ramadan. So, when a family or an individual wants to think about reducing food waste, there are three different areas under that header that you need to think about. One, how you purchase food. Two, how you go about preparing food. And three, how you go about serving or eating the food. When you purchase food, it's important not to go hungry to the store. When you do that, you sometimes impulse buy and you purchase things that may end up going to waste because you either don't like them or you don't finish them. Also, we are, many of us, especially with families, purchasing food in large quantities in bulk. When we do that, sometimes we overbuy. If we don't like an item, we may not finish it. If we overbuy, it might go bad in the refrigerator. We need to think about food storage in this area too. When we think about preparing food, we need to plan for having no waste. That's easy to do if we don't overcook. But if we do overcook, and many of us like cooking for our families during Ramadan and eating during Ramadan, and there's nothing bad about that. But what we need to do is make sure that we are saving the food that is left over.
Mm.
Use it, and rather than throwing it away, use it again. Make that a priority in your home before you cook more food to eat what you've already prepared. And finally, it has to do with serving. When you are getting something on your plate, I know when we're really hungry, there's an idea that we load our plates up with things we love, but we might also put more on our plates than we can actually eat, and that creates waste too. So being
So
reasonable in
it's a bit
mind.
hard though. It's a bit hard though to tell someone not to shop when they're fasting during Ramadan, because we have to shop during the day when we're fasting, right?
Well, we had some articles on planning too, and some of that involved making sure that we did a lot of those kinds of things that could be done in advance. So you're right, though. We have to be practical and reasonable in
So
applying.
basically, the idea is moderation. Just sort of
Yes,
like buy what you think you'll need, plan
definitely.
it so that you don't buy too much, cook so you don't so there's not too much. Although I know of husbands who refuse to eat leftovers. So how's a woman to
I
do?
don't understand that myself, because if we take it upon ourselves to understand that it's important for us personally not to waste, that this is part of our Islamic guidance, then having that kind of an attitude really doesn't match the reality of that's a luxury. Think
Mm.
about that, that we're not going to eat leftovers, that we only want food that's made fresh and from scratch. Is it more delicious? Perhaps, but some dishes actually improve with age. So, got to keep our minds open here.
Okay, so you mentioned food. Now let's talk about water.
Water
Splashing while we make wudu and everything.
Yeah, water consumption is very important. Here we can think of three areas too: what we consume, what we use for personal hygiene, and also what we use around the home. So, in terms of drinking water, it's essential that we drink water, and we probably none of us are drinking enough water during Ramadan for sure.
Mm.
But here we could use water bottles, our own personal water bottles, instead of buying bottled water. Or when we are drinking bottled water, and this sometimes happens when we go to iftars, either in people's homes or at the masjid, make sure you're not leaving water in the bottle. That would be wasting the water. Use it for a plant. Use it even in the grass
Mm.
rather than throwing it away. And be sure to recycle those containers as well. You can also, in terms of personal hygiene, be very mindful of the water you're using during wudu. There's a wonderful activity I liked to use when I was a teacher to show students really how much water you need to make wudu with. And we used to make water in a wudu using a cup of water. You
Mm.
know, thinking about how to minimize the waste there, not leaving the water running while you're making wudu, or particularly while you're brushing your teeth.
Mm.
You know, that's a lot of wasted water that can be recaptured or not wasted in the first place.
Well,
For
that's a good reminder. I've actually tried that. I didn't find it easy because it's so much easier with the water running than
Sure, sure.
out of the.
But it makes you think about it. It really makes you think about it a lot more. And that would be the sunnah for us to be sure that we're not wasting in all of these areas. We can also save water use around the home.
Mm.
For people that have purchased their own homes, consider a rain barrel.
Mm.
Capture the water that's coming to us as a mercy from Allah and use that water on your plants outside. It's a great way not to have to use tap water or other kinds of water, you know, around the home. Washing your car, make sure you're not leaving the hose running while you're washing the car. That would save a lot of water too.
So we're almost out of time, but you did mention a very important category. So let's try to do that one briefly.
Pretty quickly. That one would be a saving on energy use. And there's a lot of ways that individuals and families can focus attention here. So, energy, think of electricity. Energy, think of transportation. Energy, think of things that we use collectively. For individual use, make sure that you are turning lights off when you're not using them, turning TVs, computers, other things off that draw electricity when you're not using them. Make sure that you're using energy saving light bulbs or appliances if you're making a purchase. In many of the locales, particularly in North America, there are all kinds of tax incentives and other kinds of government subsidies for making these purchases that are energy conscious.
Mm.
In terms of transportation, be sure that you're carpooling or making good use while you're out of going to many different places rather than just one place at a time. Now, this takes planning. Now, in our masjid communities, we also can be mindful of energy use by thinking about installing light sensors that turn lights on and off with motion.
Mm.
That may be the best way of not having lights on for long periods of time when nobody is using that electricity. There are all kinds of ways, and the articles on the Sound Vision website have even more details than I've been able to cover in this short time.
Well, we have about 25 seconds left, but how are people reacting to these tips?
I think that there's a growing concern about the environment, and particularly climate change is driving that. In some areas, and in Canada particularly, there are groups of Muslims that are leading the way. Alhamdulillah. We have some articles on the Sound Vision site about a lot of those efforts, and we should all support them. But this is where parents come in and play a very big role. The way we act around our children is the way they grow up being mindful of these kinds of activities. Please, please, please be conscious of reducing and recycling and reusing when you can, and doing your best to eliminate all kinds of waste during Ramadan.
Well, thank you for these important reminders, and have a good rest of Ramadan, inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much. You too.